Now, onto the political scene, campaign-related violence, particularly targeting opposition presidential candidates and their supporters, continues to raise serious concern amid repeated reports of brutality by security forces. As these incidences are persisting, many Ugandans are increasingly questioning the perceived silence of religious leaders who are often regarded as the moral conscience of society. Why, they ask, have faith leaders not spoken out more forcefully against election-related violence? Our reporter David Ijjo has been tracking this development story and joins us now to explore the reasons behind the muted response from the religious leadership as well as their aftermath. And this is what is regarded as Uganda's democracy. Now, David Ijjo, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Priscilla.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have you. We are looking at religious leaders and they've come under scrutiny for their muted silence. And people asking themselves what is contributing to their silence when we should be seeing them as vocal towards the election-related violence and brutality.
Absolutely. It's a story still under development, but members of the clergy have been criticized for their prolonged silence, just as you stated, especially in the recent campaign violence that we witnessed, particularly here in the central and parts of northern Uganda in Gulu, following a peaceful start of 6 weeks. Of course, the recent past, rather the history of the country shows that religious leaders have often been speaking out. When you look at Janani Luwum, who died in 1977, often spoke out against political injustices. His Catholic counterpart, Emmanuel Subuga, these often spoke about political injustices. Even in the recent past, the late Archbishop of Kampala Archdiocese, that is Cyprian Kizito Lwanga, and the Emeritus Archbishop of Gulu, John Baptist Odama, in electoral cycles like this, they often came out to speak against police brutality and you know, the use of force meted on opposition figures. Internationally, South Africa's Desmond Tutu has also been a key figure when it came to speaking against the apartheid regime in South Africa, but also in our neighbors in the north of South Sudan. The Bishop Paride Taban has also been a vocal bishop when it comes to speaking against you know, political injustices. Back at home here recently, while appearing on NTV, the former dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe, that is Colonel Augustine Musiufu, condemned his fellow religious leaders for their silence against you know, the attack on members of the opposition, but also some for campaigning for, you know, candidates at a time where they are required to be neutral. Of course, he castigated many of them of dining with the oppressors, preaching other things instead of preaching, you know, against the ongoing brutal force being unleashed on members of the opposition. So these are some of the concerns.
Yeah.
And of course, it should be noted that President Museveni himself has time and again, you know, asked religious leaders to back off politics and focus on their work of evangelization and, you know, stop preaching about politics. Now, with just 4 weeks left to...
Just before you go ahead, the examples that you have given, for example, the late Archbishop of Kampala, Dr. Kizito Lwanga, and also even the late Sheikh Muzata, they were very public figures in terms of justice and good governance.
Absolutely.
And it begs the question, them among the other religious leaders that you have listed in previous days, how have their interventions, you know, created any impact towards good governance and good politics?
The impact is debatable, but you see, religious leaders being custodians of morality, when they speak up, the expectation from the people is that when they speak up, at least they shape change in terms of policy, in terms of what the powers that be are supposed to do or not. So in terms of impact, that is something debatable, whether the impact has come. It could be to a greater extent, it could be to a smaller extent, but the expectation of the public is whether the impact is there or not. Them being custodians of morality are expected to speak out against injustices.
Aren't Ugandans being quite unfair to the religious leaders, considering that some of them have actually had repeated sounds and repeated messages sent to them from the political leadership to stay in their lane?
To some extent, you could say they are being unfair, but of course, the dynamics of religion is not, does not operate in line with the expectations of the entire public. Recently, the Interreligious Council of Uganda, somewhere last month in November, did issue a statement on the state of current affairs in the country. And of course, part of the statement was condemning the violence that was meted in Barara, if you do remember. But also, what happens is that most of these religious councils have certain timelines when they issue their words to the public. Now that we are entering into the festive seasons, perhaps we expect different institutions like now the Episcopal Conference, Kampala Archdiocese, or even the Interreligious Council itself in their Christmas message to highlight some of these concerns that Ugandans are putting forward, especially when we are left with just less than 5 weeks to the polls.
Okay. Also, there's an argument that why should religious leaders speak? After all, some of them have been seen to be under the arm of the government with inducements such as financial support and vehicles, also intimidation and threats here and there. So some people are thinking, okay, they are in the pocket of the government, so they cannot say much.
Yeah, but you see, when you speak to religious leaders themselves, because these are some of the questions I put to them, and they say for them as religious leaders, they are neutral. Them being seen with government, especially being gifted cars during functions, it is just a gesture of peace, cooperation with the people in government, but even the players in the opposition themselves. So they argue that them as religious leaders, they play a neutral ground. And the argument of cars gifted to them as a sign of them being bought is something they do not buy. But also that's another perspective of a sect of the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, David Ijjo, thank you so much.